Good morning, Stefan.
Good morning, Jamie.
How are you?
I'm pretty fucking psyched, I
Good. Well,
think.
that's good. That's a good start to our weekly conversation.
Yeah.
Well,
I
welcome.
it yeah, I think I'm fairly speechless actually. A lot of the things experiencing, I don't know that I have vocabulary for right now.
Oh, I think that's totally acceptable. I can always ramble about something, get some sparks going. But I have mornings like that too, where my mind is just kind of like, and
Well, it's not for lack of stuff
right,
there. It's just that the experiences are um, new. The there isn't a vocabulary for some of the feelings or some of the things I experience.
yeah.
Like yesterday, I went out sailing. The weather here has been fantastic. It's these perfect fall days that everybody dreams of, where it's in the 70s, close to 80 even maybe, and it's just beautiful here right now. The
Yeah.
temperature, everything, and I went out on the lake for my typical afternoon sail, and the breeze was perfect. The quality of the wind was consistent. I could sail up and down the lake on one tack each way. And my ability to control the sailboat was also another level of easy, like my comfort in the boat and the quality of my ability to control the boat was remarkable.
That's
And so I,
awesome.
I haven't had that experience where I was so relaxed and so comfortable in the boat, and everything seemed to go perfectly.
Oh, I like this. This is
So
good.
it's a so in it's harder to accomplish. I mean, I've had, you could call that a flow experience, right? We have these, in sports we have these flow experiences, but in running where I've had this experience, cycling where I've had this type of experience, and a rock climbing, I don't think I've ever had anything so sustained.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
when I got off on the boat, the whole world was different.
Yeah. No, I think I don't have words for that either. I
I
don't have
don't
words
know.
for that either, but I feel like I can relate in a lot of ways, that there is something, I don't even know if magnetic or energetic about the air as you described it, the temperature. We've been experiencing a lot of those here as well early in the morning when we do our walks with Ernie. We drive over to, I've mentioned this a few times, we drive over to the park where it's just a different world, right? It's not Las Vegas. It's a
Yes.
different world. It's like you just drive 5 minutes away and you're in a different world it's full of lush green trees, but the sky around you here anywhere in Las Vegas, the sky is just vast and open. Like it's just, it feels free and it feels like I can breathe, but that breath is also very reconstructive. And every day when you breathe that in and you go out there and, I'm watching little Ernie and his great enthusiasm for every minute of that experience. And I'm being inspired by his enthusiasm. But then also you just lift your head up and look around, like 360 degrees around, and it's vast and open. And when the air and the temperature is also that crisp and sort of rejuvenating, perfect temperature. It's one of those things that's very hard to describe, but you feel it, you breathe it in, and it's like it fills you up with all of that. And it's yeah, I feel like that's been a mindful way of starting every day, despite everything that might happen later, right? Like in the day,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
started a new project. There's a little bit of a whirlwind effect that happens with those things. But trying to remember, I don't have to operate in the whirlwind. I've always been able to operate outside the whirlwind as long as I can keep my head about me and remember that I control my situation. I don't have to get sucked in. And that's what starting my day that way has helped me remember. And it's a fresh start every day.
Yeah, I love the word the reconstructive quality of taking a breath in. I love that. It is part, and what it reminded me of is the reconstructive quality, right? We can call it the reconstructive quality of nature, but that word reconstructive, the other word I would add to that is that it's inclusive, or again, there is no, I'm fishing for a word, but well, there's a couple things I wanted to say. One, I saw the picture that you posted and I thought that is a beautiful morning walk.
Yeah, the
That is
lightning
not
one.
Las Vegas. That is
Yeah,
somewhere else, right?
yeah.
Like that is, but the it's the point in nature where maybe there's no separation. I've had this experience. I was in Panama, and it's very hot and humid in Panama. And I was down on the beach, and it started raining. And the rain and the ocean and my body all seemed to be the same temperature. And so I walked into the ocean, and it's fairly calm at this beach near where a friend of mine lives. And I felt no separation. I couldn't tell the difference between the rain coming down from the sky, the ocean that I was in, and the rest of my body. There was no, it was a perfect confluence of temperature, texture, and sensation, where the raindrops that were falling were, I mean, we are whatever we are, 97% water and a bunch of things that holds it all together. But that was maybe like the moment that of sailing yesterday where there was so little separation between me and nature.
I love that. Like that's something that I hadn't really processed. When I'm out there, it's still me in nature, not me as nature. And I love the idea of just switching that one word, right? Me in nature, me as nature. That one word kind of changes everything. But
It,
that's what
that might be what it is that I was feeling the nature of my own nature.
yeah. Yeah. But there's something to that. And that makes me think, like what with that shift, I do feel like all of this that we're doing here on our little unconstrained conversation, I feel like everything that we do is every week we regroup and we kind of modify a little bit moving forward, right? And that's if that is my takeaway this week already, so early in the conversation, that one little shift in mind gives me so much to practice, right? And this is what I love about these conversations is that like we walked into it not really knowing what's gonna surface, right? We talk about what we've been feeling, what we've been doing, where we're at. And honestly, energy this morning is very calm.
That's what
Like
it felt like yesterday for
like
sure.
I feel like I feel it right through here because I know I came into this like I got my coffee, I'm caffeinated, like I'm like that a lot, right? But like I've got my energy and I went on my walk and I don't know, like and it's a beautiful day. I did my coffee post for the first time in a week and I just like I've got like all my juices flowing here, but then like to have this conversation with you and I like it's such a welcome recalibration, right? And that's something that like I appreciate, something I feel like I'm always iterating on. It's like recalibration, remember your pace, remember the pace that you want to be. And not that there's anything wrong with operating at like but taking it back a level allows you to step back and have perspective and view and connection, and I love that.
Yeah. I think also what happened yesterday is I went into, normally when the sailing is going to be good, I knew the wind was good yesterday. And so I got there at the right time during the day to our little marina, and no one was there, and everything, even the marina was more organized. There weren't so many boats in the way. And normally I'm more like Ernie
Yeah.
when I'm ready to go sailing. I'm more like Ernie. I'm like, oh, I can't hurry up enough to get the boat rigged. I can't do this or do that. And then also somebody sent me a text message because they've been trying to go sailing
Oh,
with,
nice.
and proposed some I proposed some times, but they never got back to me. So while I'm rigging the boat, they're sending me messages. Oh, I just dropped a friend off at the airport, and I go, well, I'm leaving the dock.
I'm
Right? I
not
wasn't
waiting.
willing to get on anybody else's
Yeah.
train or hurry, but everything, I was much calmer to begin with. And then when I went out on the lake, everything just fell into place. The wind direction, I mean, it was pretty sublime. But that whole, um, it was just another level of calm. It was maybe like being part of nature. I was at a pace that had nothing to do with my ego at that point. Right?
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with, all right, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna stay out this long, or there was no plan, there was no agenda, there was nothing. I just took what the wind gave me, and then I kept going and going and going up and down the lake, and refining my ability as a skipper of this little boat, because there's always more refinement. And I tried a completely different method of sailing the boat, which can be risky in high winds, which is I just trimmed the sails, and then I kept the sails trimmed where they were, and then I steered to wherever the wind took me, which is, if there's a gust, the wind can blow you over if you're not really on it. So I
Yeah.
was in the zone for a long time, and that was pretty cool.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. I just have, I've never had that experience for that long a time, or let's say being immersed in it.
That that is everything because that's what I feel we've been talking about the evolution toward, right? Like, how do
Mhm.
you take these moments that we often feel in very definable moments or blocks of time, right? We're just like, oh, this experience was amazing. This experience was amazing. But the goal here is to thread it together and make amazing more, it just is. That's the way, that's the existence, right? And I know things bump us around from time to time, but our perception and how we process it, it's all linked together, I feel, in this feeling and how long this feeling lasted. And like the things that you just talked about in sailing, I don't know, I'm trying to kind of mash it out in terms of like, there's a possibility here of making that like even longer, right? Like you've never experienced it so long, but it can
Well,
get longer, even if you're not doing this one activity, right?
yes, well, what it is, I believe, is that I let go of any material expectation, right? My ego was disconnected for that time. And the reason we're having a hard time describing it as a feeling is because feeling invariably has judgment placed on it, right?
Yeah.
We feeling is like, oh, I felt crappy, or I felt this, I felt this, had no judgment placed on it. So there was no feeling in the normal descriptive sense that we talk about feelings. Feelings have judgment. Feelings come out of our ego's history with a lifetime of feelings. So this was the pure experience of being in nature, doing something, being a part of nature. That's the neat thing about sailing, is you can become a part of and integrate with nature on a sailboat because the wind is taking you. You're you're choosing a course, and then the wind is taking you on that course. It's that same metaphor of, where we've talked about jumping in the river and going with the flow.
Yeah.
But here I am. I'm fishing. I'm speechless in a way, because there isn't a feeling. This is just a pure experience. The moment we try to place a feeling on it, it actually diminishes the
Yeah.
experience of being, because nature doesn't say, oh, I'm feeling sad today, or the hurricane doesn't say, oh, that's sad that I knocked over all those houses, right?
Right.
That
It's just existing, and that's
nature exists, right? And
exactly.
we are that. We
And that's
are.
it. I mean, that's it, right? I mean, that's sort of it. But we do, I mean, our frameworks, so to speak, like predispose us often to trying to categorize and classify things. And it's okay not to. I think like the cool thing that we're saying here is like, it's okay to just exist. And I hate it that I just put the word just in there. It's okay to exist, because that's not, I feel like just diminishes the power of existing, and existing.
This is existing, is this, it is limitless the moment we put a feeling on it, right?
Yeah.
Because a feeling is a learned judgment.
Right.
They're just learned judgments. The moment we put those feelings on our experience of being in and of nature is the moment we diminish the actual grandness of the nature that we are, right? We're limiting our ability to be part of all of this, to understand the truth of that we are part of all of this. It's all, we're in the matrix, right?
You know what's
That's
gonna
the
happen? I was thinking how beautiful when you say to someone, "How are you?" and they say, "I am nature." And we know exactly what that means.
And then they take all their clothes off and go, hey!
No, no. It's so funny because that's such a
No, you're
thing.
closer too.
You know what? That actually brings up a funny thing for me personally. You know, like nakedness and dancing. Like a lot of people associate nakedness and dancing with the ultimate freedom and nature because of what it is. But like, I don't know if this is way too much personal information, but like I don't know that I'm a dancer. I'm more of a head bobber. You know, but like for some people I see, you know, I see people, they express their joy and their bliss through dancing or through being naked or whatever. I've seen this with people, but I don't relate to those outlets or expressions of joy. Those are not expressions of bliss or joy that I necessarily connect with. And I don't know, like I have to imagine there are other people out there that's like, oh, well, you know, you're constrained by your clothing or whatever, but like, no, I just never really like it doesn't feel constraining to me. Maybe it's comfortable or whatever, but like I don't know. It's funny because yeah, that takes me down another path of like how different people express and connect with the feelings of bliss or joy or existing in a moment of feeling that, like, or you know, this is feeling. But
Well, that brings up a whole bunch of things. I watched a TED Talk yesterday and where somebody specifically defined joy. And I don't know that I can recreate that TED Talk here.
right.
But what I do think when I hear you say that, and I have been a part of these, you could call them hippie communities, healing communities, all of those things, all of these dance rituals, those are all rehearsed. They're rituals. They're rehearsed tricks. They're a way of generating something or putting someone in a space. But I don't know, when you're working that hard for something, it becomes a very linear process.
Yeah,
And it is constrained.
it is. And to
It is
me,
constrained. Like I want to be, I want to be, and I can be myself, whether I'm wearing my clothes or not wearing my clothes, or
right.
dancing or not dancing. And I have done the wild, crazy dancing and the big parties, and I didn't really need to do the ecstasy and all the other stuff.
Right.
After a while, I think what people care about is that they're expressing themselves or they're working something out. And the distinct difference between what we're talking about today is, one, there was no effort. Everything about what happened yesterday was about the least amount of effort possible for me to be in harmony with nature, with what was happening. Every moment I was doing less and less and less, working less in the boat, more comfortable in the boat. The wind was seemingly more perfect and more consistent and taking me where I wanted to go. And I had no judgment about it. I was just taking it with me. There was no plan for this. There was no, I'm going to connect with nature today. It just, I started calmly and I wasn't in a hurry. And I arrived every moment. I was as close to every moment as I've ever probably been in my life
Yeah.
to a moment. And like you said, you string a moment together with the next moment and the next moment, and then it becomes this sublime connection to the ineffable,
Yeah.
and we arrive in that place. And so all of these, in the when I was really young, I read all the Castaneda books, which really helped me spiritually. and just functionally in terms of things I was experiencing when I was younger, college age. And Castaneda describes a great many rituals that young sorcerers, because this is about how you become a sorcerer and the nature of reality. And he said that there's datura and peyote, and there's all of these ways that people get to these altered or heightened states to experience this. And what he says about those drugs, you know, like people go to South America and they do ayahuasca and they do all of these things. And now here in the Northwest, especially, you have these ketamine clinics, right, for people to get them to a different space. And so you're taking a trip that's really, in a lot of cases, unguided. I hung out with a friend during a couple of these ketamine trips, and the person administering the trip was just a kid nurse. There was no guidance. So all of that babble is to say that all of these things are tricks. And Castaneda says these are tricks for the stubborn learner.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're to blast you through your ego. They're to blast past your fixed idea of what reality is and put you in a space that is so distant and so mind-blowing that hopefully you can take some of that back with you. The problem with all of those things, all of those types of trips and the Sufi dancing and going to a rave, is those can indeed put you in an amazing, wild, crazy place that is the equivalent of an acid trip or a ketamine trip or a peyote trip. But you don't do that in your everyday life, right? You're not running around taking hits of ketamine. You're not getting up every morning and Sufi dancing for 30 minutes, right? It's not, you're not, and so.
Is that sustainable anyway? Like, you know, it's.
Yeah, well, certainly not doing ketamine trips every day or peyote every day. Those things aren't sustainable. And so there's no way to integrate that into being the humans that we are, navigating our everyday material world. So how do we get there, I think? And the thing is to exactly what you said earlier. It's like to link, when you have a moment where you're in the moment, try to link it, just allow it to link to the next moment. And I just happened to fall into it yesterday, where it was an hour and a half of moments that were all linked. And then even when I got to the dock, I had no connection to any of my worries or fears. I still had no agenda. It was like, I'll just pack this up and I'll take the tape off the boat that I was working on. I had masked off a boat that I was spraying gel coat on. So I cleaned that up and that looked really good. And then I talked to Ray, one of the brokers at the brokerage, and that felt really good. And it didn't feel really good. It felt, there was no big, it wasn't good or bad, or it was just what I was
not
doing.
A remarkable feeling. It was just existing, but existing in a bigger way, maybe. I don't know if I'm.
Yeah. Well, yeah, without an agenda, without a material or linear attachment to something that was the next moment.
You know, what's interesting about that too, though, how you talk about, like how people will do a certain thing to experience a space, ketamine trips or whatever, right? It's interesting as you were describing it, it kind of reminded me, and this kind of tethers it to a material outcome, but not intentionally. But when I was kind of going through my burnout era, and I said my burnout era, 2012, my dad passed away, burned out on the work stuff, my career that I'd spent 12 years building. And I just hit like a rock bottom, right? I hit a rock bottom where it didn't matter if I had money coming in. It didn't matter if I lived. Like I really was at the, like in my perspective, I was like living was kind of like, whatever. I don't know. I just got to figure something out from here, but I wasn't trying too hard. And
Mhm.
the more that I let go and just let go, um, the more illuminated I felt I became, if that makes sense. And the more, I guess, clarity around what my next action needed to be would surface. Like for me, what that manifested as was writing, first writing. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna write, and then writing turned into a paid thing. Like it was not something that I was like, oh, I need to get paid for this, or I need to figure out an income. That it wasn't there. I'd socked away a few pennies. I had about 6 months of runway, and I knew I just needed to get my mind right. But even that was just kind of like, let's see what happens. But the more I let go and the more I put into the things that were important to me, my value system, basically, the more everything just like amplified, right? Like my existence became easier. So when you talked about that with the boating, right? Like the more there were wins and you did some things differently than you might normally, you tried some new things. That was a very parallel description of what I was going through in that time. And the more that it just seemed like things became easier, and the easier things became, the more my income grew, my time felt more expansive. I had time. And like, so all of these things, and all of these things led to the freedom that I have today to choose to feel and explore and not feel beholden to a boss or a job or all of those things gave me almost what felt like too much space, so much space that I felt like I had to start grabbing some things to define some space for myself again, and I don't know, but I'm mindful about what I choose and what I accept. Anyway, I just like, I relate to a lot of what you're saying. And I feel like it's such a good example of even that experience of my own, where it was like, the more that I kind of let go and relaxed about things, the more illuminated everything became. And even though when I say that, it's not like there was a clear path, I let go of the outcome. I let go of needing, to gotta have this or go for that. And it was more of, everything became an experiment. I'm gonna try this and see what happens. I'm gonna try this and see what happens. And I never stopped. So there was never just a like being a pile of mashed potatoes. There was always an ongoing effort being made, but the effort, the source of the effort, the source of the energy I was putting out there had shifted. I wasn't giving someone else my time. I was giving me my time and creating more of it as I went along. If that makes sense, but yeah.
So much good stuff in there. I want to start by saying I I think, I believe, I challenge you to never call that phase of your life your burnout
The
phase.
burnout phase, because
No,
it
you need to
wasn't.
call it, you need to call it, you said the word at the beginning of this, you need to call it your reconstructive phase.
Yeah.
And just that's I think a kinder way to put it in history.
And it's
And it's
very
more, it's more
truthful.
accurate. It's
Yeah.
actually more accurate because there was you didn't burn out. Otherwise we wouldn't be here talking. So it is not the burnout phase, right? Because
Yeah.
you went through it. The burnout means the candle is out.
It sure felt like it was there for a while. It really did.
Yeah. But again, feelings are, they're judgments we place upon experiences that are somewhere in our habitual, history. We feel things, they're part of our epigenetic karmic inheritance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? The field of feelings that it's a subscription service, basically. We
It
arrive
is.
and then we
It really is.
subscribe to a way of thinking and feeling
Yeah.
based on our environment and everything else. And
Cancel
then
those subscriptions. Get new subscriptions.
I am no longer a card carrying member of that club.
Yeah, like, and it is interesting. I don't want to derail because you're in a good rhythm there, but like I like canceling those subscriptions. I do.
Yeah. Well, and after a while, I think when what we're experiencing becomes so vast, that those subscriptions will become tiny little features on the horizon, right? They're just tiny little features on the landscape. And the only thing that makes them important is that we focus our energy on them. It's just like if my little phone is 500 yards away, it's basically insignificant. I can't see it, right? If I'm in a giant field of grass and this phone is 500 yards away from me, it's insignificant. For all purposes, it doesn't exist. The moment it's within 10 feet and I see my phone, all of a sudden there's all the emails, there's all the text messages, there's all the apps, there's all the things in this. And then the closer I bring it, the more this becomes the whole world.
Yeah.
And so it is just our point of focus. And again, if you call that your reconstructive phase, it's bigger, it's more accurate actually than your burnout phase, because you did not burn out. There was no death of Jamie, right?
It's true.
Jamie did not end. And Jamie was not even really limited other than through her own perception. And I've had those same experiences of being, when my daughter was born and me being homeless. And I remember the same types of feelings. I don't care what it's called. I don't care what I have to do. I just need a job, because I just need a job, and I will do that. And I ended up working with one of the most creative people and restaurateurs and the most creative restaurateur in all of Seattle at the time. And I got to do some really wonderful, fun things and get back on my feet. And I got to hang out with still one of my favorite people in the world, who's still here, my pal in Seattle. And even though there were moments in there that were just super scary and super painful, and opened up a world of unknown and existential dread, I'm still here. We're still here, right? We've still arrived in this moment. We went through it. And so I can only be grateful for it, because it gave me everything I'm standing on right now. It's that whatever was in my spirit that took me through those things, it put me here in this moment with you. And we're talking about things that are marvelous, right? They're marvelous.
Yeah, they are. They are marvelous. And it's one of those things too. Oh, so here's the thing that came up, and I don't want to cast a dark spot on our conversation, but
Oh, I'm ready for it. Bring it. I have material in that.
So a person who has been a long time member of the Jamie community, right? So my writing, my speaking, my everything, the podcasts, everything that I've done since around 2012 to now, this person has been a very strong supporter and just presence and commenter and, very engaged in what I'm doing and contributor. And we've become friends over the years. And this person learned that he has pancreatic cancer. And comes with that diagnosis is a lot of, wow, okay, like a lot of jarring reality, right? And in his own words, it was, everything can change in an instant. And my response was, well, shit. like, well, shit. And I put some thoughtful words, like, because he had called, but I don't take calls from numbers I don't recognize, and I was doing anyway, whatever. So I get a message and then an email that explained in further, and I was like, whoa, I got this message, and so I did respond in kind via email with some very, very heartfelt words, but also like, well, shit, like, here it is. And yet, I think I put in there somewhere in the response was like, I hope that the MRI, he said he has an upcoming MRI to see what the options are. And I said, well, I hope that the MRI reveals a lot of possibility. Possibility is something you and I have been talking about, and just being open to possibility. And anyway, it was a really nice exchange. I feel like I owe this person another follow-up, and I'm eager to do that. But yeah, just that. Okay, so this brings up a question that a lot of people ask, right? If you were told you had a finite amount of time to live, would you do anything differently than you're doing right now? And I feel like I've been checking myself on that since about 2012, if not sooner. I mean, when I lost my brother when I was 11, and my dad was such a great example of like, life is short, like if nothing is an example of that, a few things are a greater example than your brother dying when he's 15 years old and you're 11, and life is short. So you better make good use of the time you have, because you don't know when it's going to end. Every day you're dying, right? Every day you're dying. And so every day you better be living. And I don't know, this is one of those things where, so like, then my mom passed away when I was 27, my dad passed away when I was 37. And it's one of those things where I feel like I've had a lot of frequent check-ins with that question. All right, what would you do differently? Would you do anything differently? If money were no object, would I do anything differently? I feel like I've created a space where it's not that money is no object, but if I want to go somewhere, I'm going to go somewhere. If I wanted to move, I would move. I can move. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I would do anything differently. And it's a question that I think it's a fair question to ask. Like, if you were to have a finite amount of time, are you happy with where you're at right now?
Well, I think that really, well, at first I want to acknowledge the pain of how crushing it is to see friends who we really enjoy go through or who are faced with cancer. And that's increasingly, for me, there's quite a few people. I just have one friend who had a double mastectomy. I just have another friend in the rock climbing community who is also a doctor of veterinary medicine. So she's very well informed about all kinds of healthcare stuff. And she's very thoughtful about the way she takes care of herself. And she has definitely been living a bold, brave life, but she was already a bold, brave, very expressive person before that. I mean, somebody who is a lifelong rock climber. This is somebody who got married at Smith Rock State Park in Oregon, which is like a world-class climbing mecca. And the only reason they got to be married there is because they rescued one of the climbing rangers. Normally, they wouldn't even let people
That's amazing.
do a ceremony like that in the park. It just wouldn't be allowed. But somehow they got at any rate, these friends, they are all of this, that question of what would you do differently? It depends on where you live spiritually. Because if I am in the space I was yesterday, I would not do a single thing differently.
Yeah.
Because that moment yesterday was indescribable, right? I mean, we're still spending, you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have an emotional, a descriptive emotional analog that I have had in my, you know, that I can link it and we can project it onto other events in our lives. But the best I think we've done here today is to say that I was in and of nature at that moment. And that moment was a continuous string of moments that had no judgment or linear desire attached to it, right? No linear material desire to a moment in the future, or I can't wait till I get done with this and get to dinner. Had none of that. Not even in a most minuscule sense. There was no like, oh man, I need to anticipate this or that. It was just like, oh, I'm turning here. Oh, the wind is pushing me this way. It's just, um, maybe 3 seconds was the most that I was out of it at any given moment,
Yeah.
right? Maybe 10 seconds. But it's so when we ask that, what would you do or how would you live your life differently? For someone who is living in a place that is spiritually very low and not very bright, they might want to do everything differently, right? They might want to change every single moment that got them up to there. They might be stuck in the past, or they might want to build a future that has no real connection to their present. That's the other thing. The only way to be present and to continue to be present is to link your present to the next moment, right?
Yeah.
And so to think about something that is super radical, like an extreme trip or something like that, is an incredible amount of stress because you need to use force to get there. You're not connected to your internal power. You're burning energy. You're trying to change the world. And so I think this is the dilemma of, would you live your life differently if you knew you were going to die? Well, we all know we are going to die.
That's
We
that's
all know
it,
we are
right?
going to
Like
die.
to me, that's why there's no difference. Like, and I, you know, I don't mean that with any sort of, it's most certainly if you have a finite time put in front of you, it says, you know, at 11 p.m. on December 12th, that's it, you're done, or whatever. It might change a momentum. It definitely might change a momentum. I don't know. I say definitely, but I don't know that maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And again, like you said, maybe it depends on where you're at and who you are. And, you know, there are a lot of variables there for sure. But yeah, I do think about, death and dying, but not in a fearful, or like, it's been such an integrated part of my life for most of my life. You know, my first death experience, my dad's best friend passed away when I was in kindergarten, and his son was in my class, and he was in the accident with his dad, and his dad, like, it was a motorcycle. Anyway, it was just like, that was my first experience with loss, really, that I can remember. And, you know, from there, and then it was, you know, it's just like, from there we had another one. And then just a few months before my brother passed away, my best friend in 6th grade was also killed in a car accident. So just, you know, it was the November, and my brother passed away in February. So it was like, those were really close together. I feel like it's always been right there for me. losing people and loss. So preparing for my own, like just making sure, you're not clinging to anything that makes
Uh,
you feel like you missed out. Like I don't feel like I've missed out, on anything that I can think of. Um, and I don't
yeah.
ever want to feel that way, but like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think the best way to leave is to be free from any of these material needs to have our lives be different.
Yeah.
Right. That's the best way to go. And I've seen good deaths. We may have even discussed some of these things, like,
Yeah.
my grandmas both, I think, had really great deaths where they just checked out. They're just like, time to go. So in a way, they returned to nature in the best way they knew how. Right.
I
They,
love, I still coasting on the energy of I am nature.
yeah.
I
Well,
really am.
I guess we know the name for this podcast today.
This episode, I am nature. I am still very much like moved by that
Yeah. Well,
as a philosophy.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is definitely the highest moment we've arrived at, I think. I mean, we've done a really,
It feels good.
yeah, it feels good. I will still so many things that I think we know death is guaranteed.
Yeah.
We know that people have momentum once we've talked about friends with AIDS. I got to, my best pal died um, right around, not long after you and I started working together. My
Yeah.
best pal, Durkee, died, but I knew he was dying. We both knew he was dying, and we had discussions about it's really going to suck, when you're dead, it's going to
Yeah.
suck. But I got to spend, the thing is he never stopped creating. It didn't change the course of his life. It just
Yeah.
intensified everything he was doing. He was just so prolific.
Yeah.
He not just with his music. Then he started while he was dying, he started a photography. Didn't start a photography career, I guess, but he did a show at a major gallery here in Seattle, and it was packed and sold out. And I have some of this art on my walls here that his daughter gave me afterwards, after he passed. And his life did not change. He knew he was dying,
Yeah.
right? He didn't, uh, was it a year or 2 years? Yeah. But it didn't change anything. He just kept doing whatever he did, regardless of the circumstance, right? He moved to a care facility, but the care facility was close to the performing hall where he was performing, and he still performed every night. He was like, he was like going with a walker
Yeah.
to the show. I would go to the show and he would play the entire night, and he had friends. We would sit next to him at the piano on stage and just turn pages for him, because he knew that that was as much energy as he could put out.
Yeah.
Right now, he is somebody who burned out. He burned the candle right to the end, and that is the best definition of burned out.
That is the
Right.
best definition that I've
Right.
ever heard.
There was no wax left on the candle holder.
Yeah.
Everything vanished, right? Like he would go to these shows. He was still recording music. He was working on art and engaging people, as many people as possible. In the care home, there was a grand piano, and he would sit down at that piano and just play, and people would freak out, because all of a sudden you have this world world-class piano player. I mean, come on, this is the guy who played the piano riff on Taking Care of Business, right? Like this is that guy, the guy who worked for Chiat Day and put together all kinds of incredible music for huge brands. I mean, he made operas and ballets, and here he is just casually playing whatever in the nursing home, in the care home. And that he burned out.
Yeah, in exactly the right way.
Right? Like he timed it. Like he just kept creating and doing and living his life. Nothing changed other than some of the necessary material circumstances
Yeah.
so that he could keep expressing exactly who he was, which he had been doing that since he was 3 years old. Like he had been playing the piano every single day of his life since he was 3 years old. And the only time he didn't play was maybe if he were on an airplane or on a motorcycle or in a car for the day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, every day he sat down at the piano
Yeah, that's really,
for 60 years.
that's amazing and beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the only way I think we should burn out. That's the way to burn out.
It
You just
is.
had it.
I like that.
You didn't burn out. You just had a,
Reconstruction.
yeah, you're working towards your ultimate burnout.
Yeah, I am. And you know, like I love the shift of definition, really. I do. I love rethinking that. That's a completely different way of looking at it, and I love it. I'm embracing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, that is something to aspire to.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention,
Yeah.
I wanted to mention one other thing because we talked about the dark part.
Yeah.
What I'm finding, like, I've been a little short on sleep, so then I wake up and I notice some of my dreams, and I've had some dreams that were they're some of the deepest, darkest, kind of odd, worrisome dreams. Like, wow, that was odd. That was like a dream that I might have when I was 5 or 7.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Like the kind of boogeyman under the sofa, or super embarrassing.
Yeah. Dreams you have when you're a teenager, or
Yeah. Or even like wetting the bed, kind of a dream about not wetting the bed, but that kind of feeling of incredible embarrassment, or,
interesting. Yeah. Huh.
and so I feel like I'm going back in time and even letting go or sorting through some of these seminal formative frameworks,
Yeah.
formative experiences that there's so much energy now that it's energizing those things that are so far back that might have changed the course of my life or directed the course of my life.
Yeah. It's like everything is untangling. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yes. Yeah. It is. It is interesting.
Do those, when you awake from one of those, does that affect your energy?
It absolutely, yes, it absolutely can. In some cases, there might be a lot of adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
This morning, in that instance, I was just wide awake. I was just awake, and but what was interesting was I didn't go to any trauma, or I didn't try to solve anything. I was just awake.
Yeah.
And then I hung out, and I might have fallen asleep again, but I was just awake and kind of noticing my state. of consciousness. And I thought, and then I did some breathing. I have some breathing tricks I can usually use to, if there is adrenaline, which this morning there didn't seem to be a lot of adrenaline, or I was just awake, but it was very early. And so I just took it for what it was worth. But and I'm not trying to. I guess I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm just experiencing it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I noticed about this dream that I had this morning was that it felt like the embarrassment, or it felt like something that would happen to me when I was 7 or 8 or 9, right? It was like a
Yeah.
very, very formative type of fear or embarrassment.
That is
Or
so interesting. I find it
yeah,
really fascinating. And yeah, like I don't have a resolve for, I know you're not asking for a resolve. It's just it's
yeah,
an interesting state though.
it's just an observation of what is or was
Yeah.
there that might be releasing or going.
Yeah.
And if I didn't happen to wake up, I wouldn't have remembered it. So it's just maybe a point of acknowledgement that
I
we're
feel like, yeah, there's growing and release, and this is is progress too defined? I feel like this is progress. But like, like this is like evolution in a way. That's like I remember, I think I've mentioned this one before, but like in terms of letting go of things, like there are some moments where I remember it was almost like somebody opened a jar within somewhere, and it was like this thing that you've held on to was released. Like it was just almost that clear in my mind that some particular thing had been released. And I've had a few of those experiences where it's just like somebody's opening these little jars that I've had, these little containers of, concern or whatever it is, pent up and stored somewhere. And like someone is coming along and opening my little jars and releasing all the bad stuff, the negative stuff, I don't know. I
that's
like it though.
yeah, that's a good visual. And that I've experienced a bunch of those, some of them more in guided sessions, where the same thing it's the same thing, it's just a different metaphor, where
Yeah.
you pile all those things up, whatever it is, those concerns that have to do with anything, pile them up. And when I would do this, it would just look like a giant wet pile of laundry. Just pile it up. You just pile them up.
Mine's like
And,
baby food jars.
yeah,
I
right.
don't know why. I
Well,
like these
you're a
visuals.
mom. You had 2 babies.
Little baby food
me,
jars full
me,
of crap.
me. I'm a dude. I had piles of dirty laundry, even though
I
I was
like
a
it.
dad.
I like it.
I didn't do. I wasn't, when Kate was really young, I wasn't feeding her the baby food, but I was definitely, I
Yeah.
definitely did all of her laundry.
Yeah, for real, man.
Right.
But
So,
yeah.
so it's the piling of the laundry, or piling this wet pile, and then the trick, or the trick was to go and expand myself through the pile of laundry and into the universe, out to the edges of the universe, so that I became bigger, infinitely bigger than this pile of crap, right? So that, and I guess that is becoming part of nature, or becoming part of the universe. And yours is the same thing. You're releasing what was in a jar in this finite space and releasing it to the vastness of the universe. And there's no way for you to see it or focus on it after that,
No,
right?
because
Because it's so big. The universe is so big.
and I am nature. It like works so perfectly, Stefan, without
Mhm.
not even by design there. I love how that unfolded because I feel like that's my motto for the week here, at least for the week, if not like the rest of my life. I am nature. And I feel like anybody else that if I said that to anyone else, it would just be like, and your bananas. But you
Oh,
know what? Like,
there's nature woman again. Oh, you'll love this. It's gonna bring a big circle on our entire
I love it.
conversation because we were talking about dancing, nude dancing,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
Sufi, right? So many years ago, I had a friend. Well, I guess she's still around, but at any rate, I have a friend. Her name is Patricia. She's a very well-known photographer here in the Northwest and teaches at the photography school. There's a photography school on Capitol. Maybe, I don't even know if it's still there, but this is a long time ago. But I would model for her classes. So we would go out, she'd hire a couple of models and we would
Mhm.
model and, run around. And I had long hair. So there was all kinds of fun stuff they could do. And I would have lots of fun. It was just entertaining. And
Yeah.
because the photographers are kind of nervous, right? And it's just a body. Of,
Yep.
as we now know, I
Yeah.
am nature, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
It is.
I've done
And
a lot
so,
of drawing and life drawing classes, so I do,
sure. And
yeah,
so when
relate
you're a
to this.
model, it's just, come on,
Yeah.
and so we're having lots of fun. Like, and so during this, so Patricia, to make her students more comfortable with all of this, she's like, he's just a superhero. Just think of him as nude guy.
That's amazing.
And so then, anytime that I would be around town here in Seattle,
It's
and
nude
and
guy.
I'd bump into Patricia, Patricia would just go, "Oh, hey, it's nude guy," and everyone else would go, "What?"
Yeah, like, what? Nature girl and nude guy.
Oh, it's just funny.
Oh wow. That's
That's the
amazing.
that's the subtitle of this
Nude guy.
podcast. It's I Am Nature, Meet Nature Girl and Nude Guy, Nude Girl and Nature Guy.
Oh, I love it.
discuss
Oh man.
spiritual evolution.
It works. It works. Oh, what a fantastic thing. Oh man.
I
Wow.
don't I don't
There's
know
a
if we
lot
can
of
have.
life to be lived here.
Yeah, there is. Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of moments to link up apparently that we've learned.
You know
There's
what? There are, and like it's interesting because I keep, kind of cycling back to my friend with the pancreatic cancer diagnosis, and I just want to say, like, there's so many moments left to live. Like no matter what, no, we're all dying every day. We don't know, we don't all know, but there are so many moments left, like right now and right now and right now and right now. There are so
Mhm.
many moments left to just live and exist and to be nature. And like that's what I want. That's how I want to live. That's how I want to check myself on that frequently.
Well, and when we are in that moment, we are all of it. All of a sudden, we are beyond time, beyond linear materiality, right? That in that moment, we are all of it. There is no more time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't exist. Time doesn't exist in that. Time is our construct. Nature doesn't care about
Exactly.
time. Nature has been around for a gazillion years,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a gazillion years is arbitrary. Nature doesn't care. It just is.
I feel like
Right.
that's a I feel like that's a perfect sort of I don't know. I feel like I have a lot to work with.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have a lot of energy to work with. That's what I feel right now.
Yeah. It's definitely shifted. I don't know that today we're going to outdo ourselves because we're still have to ride. You still have to ride this level of realization,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
That
that's it, right?
it's
There's a lot to,
we're putting more in the tank, and so the higher the vantage point, the more there is to see and integrate into our understanding, right? To experience.
yeah. And that's like, that's what I've loved about every conversation, every, you know, going back to our first one, and every conversation we have builds upon the previous, right? Everyone, it builds and it furthers my desire to just keep cracking things open and to like, I don't know, explore this. Yeah, I love the week timelines because it does, it gives me like, and I will say like this toward the back half of the week, I started feeling like I was losing my track a little bit. And
Mm.
I need to get back in the groove sort of so that I could expand again. I think that's what it was, is like not losing the track. Maybe it was that I was actually falling into a track is actually the more appropriate
Yes.
framing for that, because like I feel like I am I'm able to function more openly and freely and without constraint more often. And there are things that tether me to a constraint. I do have to drop my kids off at school and help do work pickups and coordinate things and have meetings. And, you know, and yeah, these are things with time constraints and time specifications. And after you do that for, you know, 5 days or whatever, like you kind of start to fall into a track. Or I think I referred to the whirlwind earlier, and I don't want to get sucked into it. I don't want to be like sucked into that noise. And so this conversation helps me pop my head back up and go, oh yeah, you don't have to live in that space. You don't have to live in that space. Remember, like the space exists, and you can design what happens, how you participate with it.
Well, the only reason the space exists is because we agreed to let it exist,
Right. And
right?
is that
We created it, right? We
right?
created the material constraints. We had the children. We
Yeah,
had our,
exactly.
right?
Like
We
I
created it,
created all of this,
right?
even
We
those little
created all this.
birdhouses. Yeah,
No,
like there are things that like, yeah, we put these walls that I live within. I put myself here. And
mm,
and I accept it. I want to check in with it. And yeah, it's not that I am complacent either. Like I feel like there's always a better to become. And where I put that energy, I feel like it's a constant self-check. It's a constant kind of going. And now I have this new question, like, okay, like how do I be nature? Like how do I actually be not being in or of nature, but actually being nature? How do I check myself in that way now moving forward? Because that's what I want. I want
yeah.
to be nature. That's what I
Well,
want.
the thing about nature is that you already are.
Right?
The only thing keeping you from it, the only thing keeping me from it is my perception of who I
Hmm.
am, is my investment in my ego and my self-image, right? Like,
Right.
who am I? Well, I'm the rock climber, or I'm the former tech industry guy, or I'm the cyclist, or
The
I'm the
boat guy.
dad, or I'm the I'm the guy who sails the sailboat every, on the empty lake. I'm the whatever. All of those things are arbitrary constraints. And so I can believe in them as being important, or try to make them important, or reinforce them through the language or the self dialogue I have and the dialogue I have with other people. or I can just let those things be what I happen to be doing, but they are not me. You, me, we are all much more vast. That is the whole point of this. We are nature. We are the raindrop hitting us on the head. We are the wind blowing dust into our eyeballs. We are the crunch of the leaves under our feet, right? We are all of that. We are that. And then everything else is a construct that we place upon that which we really are. And that's the limiting part.
Yeah. Man.
Right? I mean, the moment, I mean, every object, I like this particular type of gel pen.
I like my Pendleton mug.
My mug, right? We've got my lamp.
My Lanta.
My old Revo glasses, right?
Those are great. No,
right?
it's true. It's very
right,
true.
all
Things
those
we
things,
like. Yeah.
all those things are can be limiting if we use those as a means to define ourselves, but we are not. We are not that which we possess materially. We are nature. We are all of it and more. We are all of it.
Yeah, I don't even have words for that. I feel like I have to process and practice it.
I was gonna just say,
yeah.
dude.
Dude,
dude.
That's it, right?
I was just gonna like Spicoli, dude.
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 Yeah. Wow.
Oh man.
Stefan, thank you.
Jamie, thank you. I think we outdid ourselves today.
That's good. That gives us lofty goals for the future.
Yeah. Next week, we're going to be standing on a big heap of something next week.
Right? Wet laundry.
Wet laundry.
Oh man. Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm gonna let's let it ride because this is really good. This is a great way to start the week.
Yes. Yeah. What is a week anyway?
Yeah, right? A constraint of time. This is a great way to move through this moment.
Yeah.
To exist.
Well, much love and cheers to you and all of those you hold dear in your little household there.
Thank you, Stefan.
And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Likewise. And yeah, let's say goodbye.
Goodbye.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Hang on.
Okay.